I've never been the type to make enemies. I always thought that about myself. But considering the current situation, it seems that just by breathing, one can somehow make enemies. This crossed my mind when I received the official notice from the director, Steve. My name is James. I'm a 36-year-old mid-level employee at a construction company. I got a job at a well-known local construction firm right after high school. My parents were thrilled when I landed the job, as it was a reputable company in our area. I chose not to go to college simply because I wanted to start earning money as soon as possible. I have 4 younger brothers. It was only natural for me as the eldest to want to help support my parents financially. I was never particularly fond of studying and had no real interest in pursuing a college degree. My first year on the job was like a crash course in life, so busy I can hardly remember it. Though the workplace was demanding, I found it fulfilling. I was the only high school graduate to join the company that year. I could feel the gap I had to bridge from the very first day of work. Luckily, I was surrounded by supportive colleagues. No one looked down on me for being a high school graduate back then. When I first joined the company, there wasn't anyone like that. By the time I was 28, I had grown to be known as one of the most promising of my peers. One day, Mr. Smith, a client, suggested I consider a matchmaking. Mr. Smith, a close friend of our CEO Mr. Anderson, and a client, always had a soft spot for me, having joined the company straight out of high school. I learned everything from how to drink to high-end dining etiquette from Mr. Smith. I often visited Mr. Smith's home with Mr. Anderson. I couldn't possibly refuse the matchmaking proposal from Mr. Smith, especially since the other party was Mr. Smith's daughter. While the term CEO's daughter might conjure an image of a demure and delicate lady, Charlotte was anything but the stereotypical executive's daughter. She graduated from an industrial high school with a major in architecture and studied urban design engineering in college. I've seen her at construction sites, asking the workers various questions. Unconcerned about messing up her hair, she'd wear a safety helmet and observe passionately. I first met her at a construction site. She was visiting the site I was assisting as a site supervisor. I believe it was when she was still in high school, dressed in her uniform, wearing a white helmet. She greeted me politely. I heard that her well-composed features resemble her mother's. Her name is Charlotte. When she found out I was the assistant site supervisor, her large eyes widened even more in surprise. As we bumped into each other at various sites, we started to share personal stories. Having 4 younger brothers, Charlotte's presence felt like having a sister, and I was glad she came to rely on me for many things. To me, she was always Mr. Smith's precious daughter and like a sister. We both knew there was mutual affection. But crossing that line seemed like a difficult choice for both of us. The matchmaking proposal came up in Charlotte's graduating year from college. Yes, I would like to proceed with the matchmaking. I responded immediately to Mr. Smith's proposal. I remember being genuinely happy that the time had come when we no longer had to hide our feelings for each other. But this is where life gets tricky. The news of my matchmaking with Mr. Smith's daughter spread quickly within the company. While all my peers congratulated me, there were some who didn't take it well. I was a bit carried away and completely forgot about them. And that's when I was plunged into hell. I'll never forget it. It was the day before the arranged marriage meeting. When Al from my department told me to go to the director's office, I had a bad feeling. Steve, the son of Mr. Anderson, has never gotten along with me. Probably because Mr. Anderson and Mr. Smith treated me like a son, which Steve didn't like. Mr. Anderson once said, "Steve has always been rebellious, but his attitude in the company is also bad. He's created his own faction within the company, and lately, He's been opposing everything Mr. Anderson does. Unfortunately, many in the company have been won over by Steve, and those of us loyal to Mr. Anderson fear to take over might be happening. After a brief knock, I called out and received a brusque comment in response. Inside the director's office, Steve and some executives were lined up. "I'm sorry to say this right before your meeting with Charlotte from the Smith family, but could you go to branch 13? Steve said with a spiteful smile. I was so taken aback I could only utter a dumbfounded huh. Branch 13 is a remote southern island, far from headquarters. This wasn't just a transfer, it was a demotion. Steve watched my reaction with amusement, while his cronies snickered and laughed behind me. I realized then that this was a done deal. Mr. Anderson has been hospitalized due to illness since last month. This transfer must have been forcefully arranged by Steve. I clenched my fists, determined to stay calm. I refused to show any sign of distress. I accepted the official notice as if it were nothing and left the director's office. Inside, I was seething with anger. Thus, on the eve of my long-anticipated meeting with Charlotte, I faced this unfortunate demotion. One should never make someone hold a grudge against you. On the day of the arranged meeting, leaving Charlotte in tears was the lowest I've ever felt. I haven't been in touch with Mr. Smith since then. It's been 8 years since I was transferred to this remote island branch. There's been no sign of returning to headquarters, especially since Mr. Anderson passed away 3 years ago. Now, Steve, the one who banished me here, is the CEO. It seems my peers who were loyal to Mr. Anderson were suddenly fired. They probably thought I couldn't do anything from this island. I wasn't fired, but here I remain. Mornings come early on the island. Since coming here, I've taken up surfing. There's a shallow beach with good waves, attracting many tourists for surfing. With few other industries, the island relies on tourism. My work involves the construction of small resort hotels, villas, and pensions, among other things. There's also a fair amount of repair work, keeping us reasonably busy. The branch office consists of me, 2 young craftsmen, and 1 local administrative worker. The atmosphere here is relaxed and friendly. The peace here is unbelievable, considering how at headquarters there were constant clashes between Steve's faction and those loyal to Mr. Anderson. After 8 years, I've grown accustomed to this peaceful life and have started dreading the idea of returning to headquarters. Before work, I head to the sea and catch a few waves before going to the office. And during lunch, I gaze at the calm sea. Lately, I've had more desk work, so I make a point of looking out at the distant view, which makes me seem like I'm always staring out the window. James, you're staring at the sea again. Clara, the administrative worker, often teases me. When I first arrived, I felt anxious and lonely. Not to mention guilty for abruptly canceling on Charlotte. But with 8 years gone by, even that feeling has faded. By now, she must be around 30 years old. She's probably built a wonderful life with a great husband. The thought still occasionally stings deep in my heart. Sometimes it feels like a minor wound, other times it's a deep, sinking feeling. Well, they say time heals all wounds. With time, these feelings should fade away. I just hadn't given it enough time yet. Every time that twinge of pain hits my heart, I remind myself of this. Looks like you've got a slow day. The one who called out to me as I was absently gazing out the window was Ethan. He's a reliable older brother figure, 2 years my senior, who moved to this remote island. He runs a small ranch and offers horseback riding to tourists. Sometimes, he hosts students who are truant from school or children with certain issues for extended stays at his ranch. They engage in horse care and receive horse therapy, healing their wounded hearts. If you don't have work, Why not take the day off? He teased me, and I retorted, I do have work. Ethan, with his deeply tanned face, gave a broad grin and looked at me skeptically, saying, sure you do. Ethan, you shouldn't bother someone who's working. Suddenly, a voice as clear as a bell rang out. Behind the tall figure of Ethan, a woman with a face I hadn't seen on the island stood. Her fair skin indicated she had recently arrived. Her long black hair contrasted with her pale skin, making her look like a princess from a fairy tale, I thought. Clara nudged me, saying, James, you're staring too much, as I was transfixed by her. It's been a while since you've seen a beauty like her, right? She's my cousin and she's going to help out at the ranch starting today. She just arrived at the port. Ethan introduced her, and she greeted me. I greeted her back, caught up in the moment. I'm Amanda. Nice to meet you. Her smile took me by surprise. There was an air of sophistication about her, or perhaps a sense of good upbringing. Though her personality and appearance seemed completely opposite, she somehow reminded me of Charlotte. I couldn't tell if the flutter in my heart was because of the memories of Charlotte or because of Amanda's smile. All I knew was that a restlessness began stirring within me. Tonight, we're having a welcome party for her at our place. Want to come? You wouldn't have anything better to do back at your apartment, right? Ethan said, turning on his heel without waiting for my reply. I shrugged and thought, well, can't be helped, scratching my head. That evening, I pondered what to bring to Amanda's welcome party and finally chose fruit wine. It's made on the island and is popular among women, even off the island. Not sure if she liked alcohol. I also bought some non-alcoholic juice just in case. Ethan's ranch is near the sea, not too far from my company apartment. Good evening, may I come in? I called out as usual and opened the door, to be greeted by Amanda in an apron. Welcome, I'm sorry for calling you over like this on such short notice, she said, looking a bit apologetic, perhaps mindful of the forceful invitation earlier. Not at all. I was looking forward to coming here tonight. Here's a little gift. Do you drink? I said, quickly dismissing her concerns, and she smiled, relieved. The table was set with dishes I'd never seen when it was just Ethan and me drinking. Clearly, Amanda had prepared them. It's her welcome party, but she wouldn't just sit down and relax, Ethan said, frowning from behind the kitchen counter. I can't let a busy person like you bother with such things. If you say you can't eat my cooking, then I might reconsider, she retorted with a firmness that belied her gentle appearance. Ethan seemed a bit taken aback. As I sat at the dining table, Ethan quickly placed a glass in front of me. Didn't you bring something? Let's drink, he said, as if he had seen right through me, which was a bit annoying, but I handed over the fruit wine I had brought. In fact, this fruit wine was Ethan's favorite. I knew you'd bring it, he said excitedly, uncorking the bottle, while Amanda chuckled softly. She's probably in her late 20s, I guessed, unconsciously comparing her with Charlotte, who would be around the same age. I hope it suits your taste. Amanda served the dishes onto small plates, lining them up in front of me. Each looked delicious, to my amazement. I tasted the food. I was at a loss for words due to its deliciousness. When something is truly delicious, the word delicious doesn't come out immediately. I almost stomped my feet on the spot in delight. Ethan watched my reaction with an amused look. You're really starved for home-cooked meals, aren't you? He said, pityingly. I felt embarrassed to be pitied. Amanda seemed to get embarrassed by my repeated praises of this as delicious and hid in the kitchen. If you like Amanda's cooking so much, why don't you marry her? She hasn't gotten married no matter how much time passes, Ethan whispered, making sure Amanda couldn't hear him from the kitchen. It seemed she was still single. I can't believe such a beautiful person is still single, I said honestly, and the usually hearty Ethan made a face as if he had bitten into a bitter bug. There's a lot going on, a lot, he said, and then fell silent, taking a swig of his drink. Even someone as obtuse as me could tell there was a sensitive issue from Ethan's demeanor. "Hey, Amanda, why don't you take this guy with you for horseback riding practice tomorrow?" Ethan suddenly suggested to Amanda, who was in the kitchen. "Tomorrow is Saturday. I have the day off. It seems he wants her to treat me as a customer for the medium-distance horse riding they usually do for tourists. Originally, she's a horse rider, having won equestrian competitions, so she's quite skilled. I've been on this island for 8 years, but have never tried horse trekking. If you don't mind, I'd really appreciate it. I've never tried it before." I raised my voice so Amanda in the kitchen could hear. "I'd actually ask you for the favor. I want to become helpful to Ethan as soon as possible," she said, coming out of the kitchen. I echoed her sentiment, saying, "I'd appreciate it too." "You two sound like you're at a matchmaking meeting," Ethan muttered, making us look up. "Don't tease," I blurted out, probably blushing. In my haste, I didn't notice Amanda had fallen silent with a complex expression. The next morning, after surfing as usual, I got out of the sea just after 9 a.m. The horse trekking appointment is at 10 a.m. After a quick breakfast, I headed to the ranch. There, Amanda was receiving a lecture from Ethan on how to handle customers. There are many precautions, especially for first-time riders. She was taking detailed notes during the lecture, her profile showing intense concentration. I quietly watched them until they noticed me. Eventually, Ethan saw me and beckoned. "If you're here, just say something," he said. "Well, I didn't want to interrupt your serious instruction," I replied. While Ethan and I were talking, Amanda was steadily getting ready. Following Ethan's instructions, she briefed me on the precautions for horse trekking and then quickly got on a horse in the enclosure to teach me the basics of riding. Being on a horse for the first time, the height was more intimidating than I had imagined. I repeated standing up and sitting down in rhythm with the horse. "You're doing well. You have a good feel for it," she complimented. Unexpectedly praised, I felt a bit happy. She told me it was okay to keep my buttocks on the saddle when we moved outside, which was a relief. After all, my muscles would have screamed if we kept up that rhythm for a long time. After about 20 minutes of instruction, we finally started the outdoor ride. Amanda led the way on her horse, slowly moving in front of me. The beach was just across a road, and enjoying horseback riding on the beach is a selling point of their horse trekking. The horse was well trained. It followed the lead horse quietly. I barely had to do anything. By the time I felt the sea breeze on my cheeks, my fear had vanished, replaced by an exhilarating feeling I had never experienced before. All I could hear was the soft crunch of the horse's hooves on the fine sand and the gentle sound of the waves. The beloved scent of the sea and the sea breeze. The sea surface, illuminated by the morning sun, sparkled and reflected beautifully. "It feels great. This is the best," I found myself saying without thinking. "I'm glad to hear you say that," turning her horse's face towards me and approaching. Her long hair fluttered in the wind. Her hands, lifting her hair, were slender and pale, almost glowing in the early summer sunlight. "Did Ethan say anything to you about me yesterday?" she suddenly asked, catching me off guard. I thought she hadn't heard Ethan's suggestion to entrust her to me. With her earnest eyes fixed on me, I couldn't lie. I honestly repeated what Ethan had mentioned the night before. "Maybe he was just drunk. You know how he starts joking around when he's drunk," I said to try to smooth things over. At that moment, Amanda turned her back to me, controlling her horse. Her back seemed to tremble slightly, and I panicked, wondering if she was crying. "You know Ethan doesn't get drunk," she said almost angrily, then steered her horse towards the water's edge. Without a chance to stop her, She rode into the sea with her horse. The horse seemed to enjoy walking in the water. They eventually going deep enough to swim. "It feels so good. Why don't you join me?" she called out, then whistled sharply. It seemed to be a signal. The horse I was on started to enter the water as well. Riding a horse into the sea was another first for me. It was scary at first. But as I got used to the waves through the horse's back, the vibration and the horse's warmth felt incredibly soothing. Minor worries seemed insignificant. With my eyes closed, feeling the wave sounds and the horse's breathing, I sensed Amanda approaching. I came here for Ethan. I love him and wanted to be by his side, so I followed him to this island. "I guess you could call me an uninvited wife," she confessed unexpectedly. Her confession brought me back to reality. They were cousins, after all. He's just scared. Legally, he could marry me, but he's running away because he's worried about what people and relatives might think, even though he loves me deeply, she said. Her profile, as she bit her lip in frustration, looked like that of a warrior woman taking on a challenging battle. "That's probably why he tried to ask you something strange last night," she surmised. For her to openly declare to love Ethan, it felt strange, like I'd fallen out of love even before I ever fell in love with her. My best friend still talks wistfully about being abandoned right before marrying the man she loved. I don't want to become a woman who clings to the past. On our way back to the ranch, she said that in a strong tone. Listening more closely, I was taken aback. She revealed that her friend was turned down at a matchmaking meeting by the man she loved. Charlotte's face flashed in my mind. It couldn't be such a coincidence. I took several deep breaths to calm my racing heart. But that effort was in vain as we approached the ranch. There were two figures there, Ethan and another person. I couldn't believe my eyes and squinted for a better look. There was no mistaking it. It was Charlotte, grown into a woman. "Everyone's worried because you disappeared so suddenly. I had a hard time stopping your parents from going to the police," Charlotte scolded Amanda from atop her horse. But Amanda seemed unapologetic. "Are you going on about what society will think again? My life is my own. What's wrong with living it the way I want?" She dismounted the horse gracefully and handed the reins to Ethan, facing Charlotte directly. Contrasting with Amanda's long black hair and pale skin, Charlotte had a tan, sported very short bright hair, and her ears sparkled with several piercings. Yet, it was Charlotte who appeared more lively, who had tears in her eyes, while Amanda, with her hands clasped in front of her chest, seemed irritated, tapping her fingers rhythmically. "Everyone has their circumstances, right? There are things in life. We can't live as freely as we wish." Amanda scoffed through her nose at Charlotte, who was pleading in a voice mixed with tears. "You really haven't changed at all. Hating to be called a president's daughter, you deliberately dress like that and act tomboyish," Amanda remarked. At Amanda's words, Charlotte's shoulders twitched sharply. Perhaps she felt humiliated for being hit right on the mark. Amanda didn't stop her onslaught, even as Charlotte looked down. "But your essence hasn't changed, has it? Always worried about what society thinks, always being considerate of others, giving up on what's important to you, and living a life of regret. I'd rather not live like that," Amanda said. Charlotte, not wanting to hear any more, covered her ears with her hands and crouched down. "Shut up, shut up, shut up. I know that, I don't want to hear it." I couldn't bear Charlotte's voice, which sounded almost like a scream. Jumping off the horse, I embraced Charlotte's hunched shoulders. Her slender shoulders were trembling slightly. "Do you remember me, Charlotte?" When I softly spoke to her, Charlotte's body stiffened. Holding her breath, she slowly looked up at me, her large eyes widening. In her eyes moistened with tears, my reflection was clearly visible. "No, it can't be." In a dazed state, Charlotte murmured repeatedly. It's not a lie, it's me, James, I affirmed. Hearing my name, Charlotte's strength seemed to drain away. I supported her with both arms. So, you're the one Charlotte has been longing for, Amanda remarked, squatting beside us. Your legs must have given out from the shock, Charlotte. Amanda spoke to Charlotte in a teasing tone. Charlotte, her cheeks flushed red, retorted in a barely audible voice, Shut up, Charlotte. This is a chance given by God. What you do with it is up to you, Amanda said, patting Charlotte's shoulder lightly, as if comforting a child. I want you to be happy. After all, you're the only friend of a selfish person like me, Amanda said, standing up and smiling. Take good care of Charlotte. I nodded firmly, and with a reassured expression, she left us to tend to the horses. James, I need to tell you something. I wanted to chase after you just like Amanda did back then, Charlotte confessed. From the first time we met at the construction site, she had liked me, she said. She laughed bitterly as she talked about feeling hopeless about everything after being rejected at the arranged meeting. Regretting not being able to cling to me or chase after me because of societal expectations and her parents' views, she made me think of how inadequate my actions were. If I had just said, please wait for me, back then, she would have waited, I thought. Failing to fully believe in her and to take her away, I was truly a coward. I admired Amanda, you know, even though everyone opposed her and Ethan treated her coldly, she never gave up, Charlotte said. She laughed at herself, saying she never had the confidence to be loved like Amanda. I felt the same way. Taking a deep breath, I looked straight into Charlotte's eyes. She seemed to hold her breath. Please don't say it's too late now. If you're still single, and if you still love me, can we start over from that day? I asked. Hearing my words, big tears fell from Charlotte's eyes. I've always loved you, I still do, and I probably always will. Charlotte spoke with a clear tone, just like Amanda. I thought she mustered all her courage and took a step forward. I'll definitely make you happy. Stay with me forever, I promised. She nodded repeatedly in response to my words. I forcefully held back the tears that threatened to overflow. This wasn't the time to cry. I had decided to make her the happiest person in the world from now on. Amanda gave a sharp whistle. It sounded almost like she was saying, "Be happy." What's this? Bathroom cleaning. Did you quit law school to become a fancy janitor or something? There I was, in a facility's bathroom, casually cleaning a dirty sink. Just then, an old acquaintance of mine appeared by chance and mocked me with those words. I used to think of you as a rival, but I guess I was way off. Despite years since our last meeting, all he did was sneer at me, holding a rag in my hand. Thinking back, he was always this kind of guy, and I couldn't help but be amazed as I revealed what I was actually doing. His response was unexpected. He could only stand there, wide-eyed, unable to say a thing. My name is Mike. Ever since I was a kid, I've always had a strong sense of justice compared to other kids. I loved playing hero games with my classmates, and I always took on the role of the hero. Justice always wins. Such a childishly idealistic belief was what I aimed to embody. Naturally, my dream was to be a hero. I wanted to be a cool, invincible hero who defeats villains. Until about 4th grade, I insisted a towel blanket was my cape and wore it proudly. I ran around the park with it, climbing high on playground equipment, ignoring my parents' warnings. Looking back now, those are some pretty embarrassing memories. Among my classmates, there was another guy who aspired to be a hero. His name was Steve. I pride myself on my passion for being a hero, but Steve's passion was no less intense. We often argued, insisting each of us was the #1 hero. Our hero games often turned into fierce debates. Then I'll be the main hero. No way, I'm the main hero. Whenever my friends and I gathered to decide the lead role, Steve would always barge in like that. What are you talking about, Steve? You joined in the middle, so I'm the main hero. That's not a rule. I'm the main hero. Me. I'm the main hero. No, it's me. No, I am. No, it's me. It was a relentless back and forth, and we'd get so heated that adults had to intervene every time. Steve and I had a strange bond, first meeting in kindergarten. Even back then, he was always picking on me, and I was frankly sick of it as a kid. I thought I'd see less of him in elementary school. But to my surprise, we ended up in the same class in the first grade. And it continued like that in the second and third grades. Turns out, we were destined to be in the same class for all 9 years of mandatory education. We were always aware of each other, each striving not to lose to the other. It was a rivalry, but not in the noblest sense. Our fiercest competition was probably in academics. "Hey, Mike, what did you get in math?" He'd always come over to me after test was returned. He seemed very confident that day, smiling broadly. "What about you, Steve?" "Me? Look, I got 98. He proudly spread his test paper in front of me, like he was showing off. The teacher said the highest score in the class was 98. Steve was so smug, sure of his victory. But unfortunately, the highest score simply means the top score, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's held by only one person. "Huh, I got 98 too," I retorted with a smug look, just to crush his smile. By not making a fuss like him, I secretly took a mental victory over him. "Huh, the same score, really? That's boring. Maybe it's a mistake in the teacher's grading. You better be honest and report it if there's a mistake in your scoring." Our gazes clashed as if sparks were flying, glaring at each other intensely. Eventually, we both looked away, determined to win in other subjects next time. Whenever another test was returned, we'd meet again to compare scores. If one won, he'd taunt the other. If he lost, he'd make some excuse. This pattern repeated with every test. Our rivalry even manifested during the school's sports festival. Despite being in the same class and team, we competed fiercely, refusing to lose to each other. We competed in everything, like who passed more people in the relay. Thanks to that, or perhaps not, our team won decisively every year. Our competition wasn't limited to studies and sports. We clashed in student council activities too. In 8th grade, we both ran for student council president. However, we were both soundly beaten by an annoyingly handsome guy who only ran as a joke. That was a bitter pill to swallow for both of us. In that way, we often fought so much that those around us wondered why we couldn't get along. To the question of why, neither of us had an answer. The ritual of competing with Steve, which started from our days vying for the hero's role, had become the norm. It wasn't that we didn't get along, but that's how it must have seemed from the outside. However, deep down, we each acknowledged the other as our greatest rival. We continued our rivalry in high school, competing in everything as expected. We'd probably compete in everything anyway, whether it be studies or the sports festival. We probably would have competed over who got into a more prestigious college. But then, everything changed suddenly. In the fall of my freshman year of high school, my father passed away in a car accident. The suddenness of it plunged our family into deep grief. The photo of my father with a beaming smile, the lavish and large floral arrangements, the sounds of soft sobs. I still vividly remember all of these things. What? The driver is claiming innocence. Yes, that's right. The accident was caused by the driver's reckless driving. He was smoking with one hand and using his phone and steering with the other, even having consumed alcohol. His actions were extremely irresponsible. Yet, despite this, he claimed he was not at fault. Taking advantage of the fact that the victim was no longer in this world, he kept making self-serving statements, never once apologizing to the bereaved family. We were beyond angry, just utterly shocked. But with all this evidence, we should be okay. The dash cam and nearby security camera footage clearly showed my father wasn't at fault and that the driver was to blame. Don't worry, I'll take responsibility and clear your father's name. In this nightmare-like situation, the lawyer, Bob, was incredibly supportive. Bob, a newcomer at a small law firm, fought hard for my father's honor. Thanks to him, my father was publicly vindicated. The driver faced severe punishment. Thank you, Bob. This will finally bring peace to my husband. We're truly grateful for everything. Hearing the good news, our family, in tears, thanked Bob. Even after all this, the offender never apologized. But that's all right now. The most important thing is that we were judged fairly. Besides, I had already managed to recover from my despair. The emotion that triggered this recovery was admiration. Bob, I want to be a legal expert like you. Like me, that's an honor. Do your best, I'll support you. He cleared my father's name and saved our family from despair. To me, Bob was a true hero. Although different in form and approach from the hero I aspired to be as a child, the principle of saving people in trouble with justice remained the same. Since then, I decided to pursue a degree in law. I aimed for a more challenging university, studying hard on my own every day. I should have been fulfilled, yet I felt a slight sense of dissatisfaction. Not understanding the reason behind this feeling, I continued to immerse myself in my studies. Then, one day, when I mentioned my aspiration to study law, Steve was surprised. Really, Mike, you're aiming for that law school too? You too, Steve? Yeah, what, you want to compete with me? It turned out his father was a lawyer. Influenced by him, Steve developed a strong sense of justice and aimed to be a defender of justice, just like me. Despite that, he had a pretty foul mouth. I thought he might be more suited to be a dark hero rather than a regular hero, but I kept that thought to myself. Setting that aside, now that Steve and I had the same goal. Fine, I'll be the top entrant, Mike, you can just wail at my feet. Sorry, but I can't let that happen. My dream is on the line. Thus it began our competition to see who could score higher on the entrance exams. Determined to score even 1 point higher than him, I studied harder than ever. Before I knew it, my sense of dissatisfaction had vanished. Perhaps, deep down, I craved this competition with him. As a result of our hard work, both of us successfully passed the entrance exams. I was overjoyed to have moved a step closer to my dream, but it stung a bit to lose to Steve by a few points. As a law student, I worked hard at my studies. The stimulation from competing with Steve led to a fulfilling college life. However, things took another turn. After my father's death, my mother, who had been working tirelessly, collapsed. It must have been the toll of years of hardship. There was a scholarship to cover tuition, and I could manage living expenses with part-time jobs. If it were just me, there would be no issue, but it wasn't that simple. There were hospital bills for my mother, and I had twin younger brothers. At the time, they were in their second year of middle school, about to face high school entrance exams. They would need money for exam fees and, if they passed, for tuition. I cut back on expenses as much as possible and increased my work hours. To save every penny, my meals became increasingly frugal. I quickly lost weight, worrying my friends. Yet, I continued to throw myself into studying and working. Sometimes, I took night shifts that paid more, even if it meant losing sleep. Mike, you can't keep this up. Your health won't last. Maybe you should take a break once in a while. Professors and friends advised me, but I didn't listen. It was all for my mother, for my brothers. Thinking so, I continued my miserable life, narrowed by my limited perspective. At that time, what I held was a sense of justice for my family. But at the same time, it was also a distorted, reckless spirit of self-sacrifice. With such a lifestyle, my body broke down in just half a year. After finishing a night shift, attending lectures at university all day, and then another night shift, I pushed myself too hard while tired and finally collapsed during work. You're suffering from overwork. You should rest for a while. It's better to stop doing part-time work for the time being. What? But my family needs me. Calm down, Mike. If something happens to you, it's all for nothing, right? The doctor told me that, and I was left speechless, unable to respond. It was because he was absolutely right. Yes, at this rate, my family and I would all collapse together. Why didn't I realize such a simple thing? I thought about it a lot while receiving eavesdrops in the hospital. The dream I pursued, inspired by my admiration for Bob, and the improvement of the reality that surrounded me now. Realizing both at the same time was impossible for me. Then, I had to prioritize one over the other, meaning I had to give up one of them. Faced with this choice, my heart decided immediately, without any hesitation. I couldn't abandon my family. I decided to drop out of university and start working. This was my decision during the last week of my college life. While I was at the university handling various procedures, I was stopped by Steve. "Mike, is it true you're dropping out?" "What, you knew?" I had told my close friends about dropping out, but I deliberately didn't tell Steve. If he also considered me a good rival, my dropout might demotivate him. That's why I kept it to myself. "Why the heck are you doing this? Giving up halfway like this, because you collapsed? Is that enough for you to give up?" "It's part of the reason." "Well, there are various circumstances." Steve, looking like he might grab my collar any moment, had tears in his eyes. "Lucky you, the nuisance is gone. Now you can study to become a great lawyer without any distractions, right? Don't joke around, don't give up so easily. Was your dream just that much to you?" Steve confronted me with a voice loud enough to echo through the university entrance. However, my decision to drop out was already made, for my family, and for my own health, and I couldn't just say, "I won't quit after all." "I'm sorry." Unable to find the right words to respond, all I could do was apologize to Steve. To him, I no longer had the spirit of competition or the fangs to fight. Understanding this, Steve clicked his tongue and walked away from me. I could only silently watch his back as he left. Until I could earn a decent living, we managed with the money my father left and what I had saved from my excessive part-time work. Though it was tough, my mother's health gradually improved, and my brothers successfully advanced in their education. I resumed part-time work to support our living. Years passed since then. One day, I was in the restroom of a courthouse I visited for an errand. It was pretty clean, but I noticed a bit of dirt on the wash basin. When my mother was in the hospital, I mostly did the housework. I particularly liked cleaning and would get absorbed in it before I knew it. I just couldn't stand leaving any dirt, a habit from that time. Caring about the cleanliness was a habit from that time. I see there's a rag. It might be none of my business, but I just couldn't leave it alone, so I decided to clean up. I took off my suit jacket, rolled up my sleeves, and wiped the dirty area clean. The mirror also caught my attention, so I polished that too. Phew, that's better. Feeling satisfied, I noticed someone had entered. Standing in the middle of the hallway, admiring my cleaning work, I thought I might be in the way and quietly muttered "Excuse me" as I moved aside. As I looked up while exiting the restroom, I made eye contact with the person through the mirror. He stopped in his tracks and looked at me. Can I help you? Is that Mike? The man, wearing a lawyer's badge on his collar, called out my name. Mike, it is you, isn't it? He exclaimed with an unusually loud voice, his eyes wide open. I recognized him immediately. His hair was set with wax, and he was well dressed. But his face was unmistakable. Steve Burton, my rival since kindergarten. Hey, Steve, long time no see. It's a surprise to meet you here. His tailored suit seemed to scream his competence. I greeted him, acknowledging our reunion. In contrast, Steve sneered upon seeing me with a rag in my hand. What's this? Bathroom cleaning. Did you quit law school to become a fancy janitor or something? No, it's not like that. I denied Steve's words, but he continued to mock me. He continued to mock me, saying it was something only a lowly person would do. I can't believe the guy who was competing for the top spot with me ended up like this. I thought you were my rival, but it seems I was totally mistaken. Frustrated with Steve's unwillingness to listen, I put away the rag. You seem to be misunderstanding something. I washed my hands, dried them with a handkerchief, put on the jacket I was holding under my arm, and then looked Steve straight in the eyes. I'm a judge, actually. Well, an associate judge for now. What? Steve finally quieted down, his gaze briefly flickering away. He must have noticed the badge on my jacket. A judge, what? Why are you? What do you mean why? You're the one who said it. Don't give up so easily. So, I didn't give up. That's all there is to it. With that, Steve's face froze in astonishment. Years after dropping out of college, my twin brothers were high school students, about to start thinking about their future paths. My mother's health had improved enough for her to be discharged, requiring only occasional hospital visits. Still, I continued juggling construction work and convenience store shifts to support us. One day, my mother called me to a nearby cafe. What? Remarrying? Yes, that's right. The person is. Oh, here he comes now. As she said this, she waved towards the cafe entrance. Turning around, I saw a man about my mother's age approaching us. The person is, wait, sir, Dr. Thompson, right. My mother's new partner was Dr. John Thompson, her primary physician. Mike, I'm looking forward to our future together. Yes, likewise, I'm looking forward to it too. The awkwardness of knowing my mother's remarriage partner only lasted the first few weeks. John was a very kind and caring person. I felt at ease leaving my mother in his hands. My brothers quickly warmed up to John, bonding with him as if they were a real family. Moreover, both of them began expressing a desire to become doctors like John and wished to pursue medical studies. I was worried about the high tuition fees, but John generously offered to pay for everything. Even though they were his stepsons, he was genuinely happy that they wanted to follow in his footsteps. He also offered to take care of our household finances, saying the money I earned for the house should be used for myself. Suddenly freed from my responsibilities, I was unsure of what to do next, but then I came to a decision. There was still something I hadn't accomplished. The path to becoming the hero of justice I had always admired since childhood. The path of law, which I had entered inspired by Bob. I resolved to re-enter the law school and resume my studies. That's the decision I made. My brothers and I enrolled in the same university, they in the medical school and I in the law school. I studied hard again, maintaining the top position in my class. I passed the bar exam on my first try and received high praise during my legal training. This is how I became a judge. But I am still an associate judge. It takes over a decade of experience to become a full judge. I continue to strive, knowing this is not the end goal. The presence of a rival fuels my motivation. Even though I was praised as a top student in the law school, I still felt unfulfilled. The fact that I had fallen behind years ago always lingered in my mind. Someday, I will stand shoulder to shoulder with that man, my classmate and rival, and surpass him. That thought has been my driving force. After hearing my long story, Steve stood there, looking down. So, that's what happened. I wondered if this man was really Steve Williams. He had such an uncharacteristic expression on his face. I'm sorry about back then. I knew your situation, yet I only pushed my ideals on you. You must have been struggling, too. He regretted what he had said to me just before I dropped out of college. His uncharacteristic words caught me off guard, and I nearly burst into tears. Why didn't I support you more? I'm really sorry. I regret it. Steve remained downcast. I said, "Look up, man," and put my hand on his shoulder. Steve, I'm actually thankful for what you said back then. Don't give up so easily. It was because you said that I decided to try again. After leaving college, I honestly thought about giving up on law. Maybe get a job at some average company and lead a vague, aimless life. After all the struggles I had been through, that should have been enough. That's what I thought. But I couldn't get Steve out of my head. His expression at the university entrance the last time I saw him seemed to be a mix of anger and sadness. If I gave up, would he get angry with me again? And there was another thing. I didn't want to end up a loser. Steve's family owned a law firm. He was an excellent student, and he would undoubtedly become a lawyer. I had lost to him in the university entrance exam scores and in realizing our dreams. Playing the hero, studying, the sports festival. Steve and I, constantly winning and losing against each other, never once allowed ourselves to be outdone. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that ending my lifelong competition with him as a loss would be like losing a part of my life. That thought was unbearably frustrating. It was these two major reasons that allowed me to make a comeback. That's why I'm grateful to you, Steve. Thanks for getting angry at me back then. Mike. When Steve looked up, he met my eyes and gave a sly smile. That's right. You've always been that kind of guy, always competing with me. No matter how much I pushed you away, you'd always claw your way back, always in my way. No, it was you who was always trying to compete with me, wasn't it? I responded with a smile to Steve's words. Fine then, Mike. Let's have another competition. Who will make it first, me taking over my father's firm as a director, or you becoming a judge? I accept your challenge. Just don't cry later, okay? That's my line. We bantered, glaring at each other as sparks flew. After a few seconds of this, we both reached our limit and burst out laughing. Ahaha, oh man, we haven't changed a bit since we were kids. Right, but this is us, isn't it? Always trying to one-up each other. Looking forward to more of this, Steve. Yeah, absolutely. Same here, Mike. Our rivalry, which began when we were preschoolers and continued into our college years. It wasn't going to end just because we had become adults. We will continue to compete and spur each other on. Though unspoken, Steve and I exchanged a firm handshake, conveying this mutual understanding. Some time later, Steve and I started to interact as friends, even drinking together. Finally, as we were approaching our 30s. Wow, you already have a wife and kids. Steve was already married, aiming to be a distinguished director for his family's sake. What about you? Me, I haven't thought that far ahead, still single. As I sighed, Steve proudly started talking about his wife and family. Marriage is great, kids are wonderful, he said with a smile. In this regard, I knew I couldn't compete with him. Instead of feeling envious or jealous, I just listened with a smile, finding it heartwarming. One day, Steve contacted me and invited me to his house. He was throwing a birthday party for his daughter and asked me to come and celebrate with them. I was worried about intruding on a family event, but apparently, my name was well known as Steve's rival, and they were eager to meet me. "Hi, it's great to meet you." As I was guided to the living room, I saw his wife and their daughter running around. "Welcome. My husband always speaks highly of you." His wife greeted me with a gentle smile. Their daughter, seemingly startled by my sudden appearance, clung to her mother's legs. Not wanting to scare her, I crouched down to her level and asked, "Hello, what's your name?" She blushed and hid behind her mother. Seeing this, Steve burst out laughing. "Haha, Mike, looks like she doesn't like you. Why are you so happy about that?" When Steve picked her up, she seemed to calm down. Looking straight at me, she said, "My name's Emily." "Is that so, Emily? How old are you?" I asked, and Emily got down from Steve's arms and ran to the back of the living room. I watched her curiously as she held up her birthday card above her head, saying cheerfully, 3. Though initially scared, Emily gradually warmed up to me. After several hours, she even brought a book over and sat on my lap. "Read this, please." "Okay, sure thing." After I read to her, Emily politely thanked me. It was surprising to see such manners in a 3-year-old. As I patted her head and praised her, she hopped around joyfully. Watching her, I began to think that having kids might be nice. As evening approached, it was time to say goodbye. "Are you leaving already?" "Yeah, goodbye, Emily." No, don't go." It seemed I had become unusually attached to her in just one day. She grabbed my pants, making it hard for me to leave. "Come on, don't trouble him," Steve said as he picked her up. She looked like she might cry any moment. "Emily, I'll come to play again, okay, promise." I extended my pinky finger, and she did the same. As we made a pinky promise to meet again, Emily suddenly kissed me on the cheek. Surprised, I turned to see Steve getting angry. "Hey, Mike, what's that about? Don't come here again. I won't let you see Emily anymore," Steve shouted, his face turning red. Then, as if to defy her father, Emily shouted loudly, "Why would you say that? No, I hate Daddy." "Emmy, what?" There I was, confused about how to react. Emily was crying, Steve was red-faced, and his wife was smiling at the chaos unfolding at the doorway. The goodbye at the entrance turned into such a chaotic scene. As a busy judge, my days are filled with responsibility. This job carries a great deal of responsibility. My job greatly impacts people's lives. But with great responsibility it comes great fulfillment. I'm determined to be a respectable judge, fulfilling the dream I worked hard to achieve. I owe my current perseverance to the people around me. My father, who always worked for us. Bob, who cleared my father's name and introduced me to the world of law. My mother, who continued to support me warmly even after falling ill. John, who encouraged me. And above all, my rival, who urged me never to give up. And now, Emily, who adores me. They are all important people in my life. Reflecting on this, I realize how much my life is supported by these people. For their sake, I will continue to be a dignified judge and strive for excellence. Gazing at the starry sky on my way home from work, I made this vow to myself. Absolutely not. Why would a low-level employee like you use paid leave to come to a luxury hotel like this? Don't mess with me. Approval for paid leave. That was just to keep you guessing, obviously. I never imagined you'd actually take time off to come here. This was the day I took my mother to a luxury hotel as a Mother's Day present. My arrogant boss was waiting for me at the hotel, gelling and looking down on me with disdain. But he doesn't know. My mother is not just any ordinary woman, and that his life was about to take a turn for the worse. My name is Kevin. I grew up in a single-parent household after my parents divorced when I was young. From a young age, I noticed how busy my mother was, working hard to provide for us. As a kid left in daycare, I was always the last one to be picked up. "Hey, Mr. Johnson, where's my mom?" "Not here yet." "Yeah, she'll be a bit later." "Want to play with blocks?" "I guess. But all my friends have gone home already." "Then let's build a big truck with the blocks together." Mr. Johnson at the daycare probably felt sorry for me, waiting for my mom every evening. He always suggested fun activities to keep me entertained. Even in elementary school, life wasn't much different. Unlike daycare, which cared for me until 7 p.m., after-school programs only went until 6 p.m. and cost extra for extended hours. After 6 p.m., I would walk home alone on dark streets, watching other kids leave with their parents. Sometimes, friends' parents worried about me and offered me a ride home. But it felt more miserable, and I hated them seeing my dark, empty house, so I would rush home alone. I never expressed my loneliness or frustration to my mother. Even as a child, I understood she was working hard. I had a vague sense of our financial struggles and debt. So, I kept my feelings to myself, enduring the loneliness silently. As I got older, I turned to sports to distract myself from the loneliness. Sweating and focusing on sports helped me forget the unpleasantness. My childhood was a battle against this loneliness. Thanks to my mother's hard work, our living situation gradually improved. In high school, I was active in sports clubs and worked part-time on my days off. But it wasn't to earn living expenses. My mother's efforts meant it was just for pocket money, like my friends. Like my friends, I was earning money just for fun. Around that time, I started thinking about my future education. About my future path. One day, with parent-teacher meetings approaching, I brought it up to my mother. Private universities are a bit too much, but you can go to any public university department you like if you want to pursue higher education. Her response surprised me. "Really? Of course, you've been through a lot. I want to let you study as much as you want." "Thanks, Mom. I'll go to college. I'll study hard and get into a public university, so don't worry." "Sorry, Kevin." "Thank you. Thank you." I researched universities that were affordable and within commuting distance from home, and studied relentlessly. Juggling work and study was tough, but my mock exam results were promising. "If you keep up these grades, you're likely to get in," my teacher assured me at the parent-teacher-student conference. Encouraged by this, I confidently took my university entrance exams. And I succeeded, getting into a public university. As a college student, I increased my working hours but never slacked off in my studies. It was a university I had worked hard to get into. I didn't want to waste that opportunity. I packed my 4 years with lectures, earning more credits than necessary. I also actively participated in club activities, making for a fulfilling 4 years. After graduation, I got a job in the textile industry. Textile work requires a delicate sensibility, but also the physical strength to handle heavy fabric rolls. Thanks to my sports background, I was pretty confident about my physical abilities. As for the delicate sensibility, that's something I'm still looking to polish. Sensibility is honed on the job, don't worry. Michael from the sales department told me. His words made me realize that, although promotion is great, I wanted to work in the field as long as possible. Once you climb the corporate ladder, you end up doing more paperwork and attending more meetings than actual field work. I shared this view with my peers. "You're quite the unique one," they said. I wondered if most people prefer to climb the career ladder quickly and work comfortably in an office. It seemed I was the rare type. Under Michael's guidance, I worked hard, often meeting demanding requests from clients. Saying I dedicated most of my 20s to work wouldn't be an exaggeration. My life revolved around the company, awake or asleep. Then one day, everything changed. Cancer. I hesitated to tell you, but being honest is better than causing unnecessary speculation. This is terrible. But it's early stage, so it's not an immediate threat. Michael had gathered us before work to disclose his cancer diagnosis. Discovered early, there was a chance of recovery and return, but at 55, he decided to take early retirement. I'm sorry to spring this on you so suddenly. I'll ensure a smooth transition and won't burden you further, he said. But are you really okay? Will you recover? There's no guarantee in medicine, but the chances are good with early detection. I won't be gone just yet. Make sure to visit me sometimes. Michael. Overwhelmed, I couldn't help but cry, and Michael gently patted my back. Due to his illness, he quickly transitioned his responsibilities and left the workplace a few days later. His successor as department head was David. Hey, starting today, I'm the head of this department. I expect everyone's cooperation. With me in charge, lax work won't be tolerated. Be prepared to work hard. His greeting conveyed a sense of unease, causing frowns among us, but David seemed oblivious. He was someone none of us expected to get promoted to a management position. To put it bluntly, he wasn't exactly known for his competence. But with Michael's sudden retirement, David, by virtue of seniority, unexpectedly landed the role. He disliked being told what to do, often begrudgingly agreeing to Michael's instructions. He was also known for lashing out at objects and yelling at juniors, not the kind of person you hear good things about. Until now, Michael had kept him in check, preventing any major issues. But now, with Michael gone and David got promoted, there was virtually no one to stop him. Moreover, it seemed David didn't quite grasp that it's already the modern era. I'm heading out now. I was finishing up my day's work, ready to leave at the regular time. Hey, Kevin, it's still regular hours. Why are you leaving? David asked, genuinely puzzled. Well, it is the end of my shift, and I've finished today's work, so I'm heading home. What are you talking about? Just because you finished today's work doesn't mean you can just leave. There's always more to do. And you guys too. Don't just talk about today's work. Keep looking ahead and keep working. That way, we can secure more contracts, which is only good for the company. Stay late as much as possible. Those who leave on time are incompetent. Work harder. David announced this proudly in front of everyone, leaving us all dumbstruck. Then, when a junior employee tried to take an annual leave. Hey, I heard you applied for an annual leave. Yes. What are you thinking? He confronted him sharply. While everyone else is working hard, you think you can just take an annual leave. Don't mess around. If you have time to spare, work. No, that day is for a family memorial service. I've taken annual leaves before and it was never an issue. So what? I'm the boss now. Forget everything that happened before. From now on, taking annual leave is not allowed. His excessively tyrannical behavior left everyone in the department bewildered. There was even this incident. Who arrives at the last minute like that? As a punishment, come an hour early tomorrow and clean the office. He dished out such senseless penalties. In another time. We've met this month's target, but it's still not enough. Tomorrow is Saturday, but I'm calling a meeting, so everyone show up at the usual time. He also ordered us to come in on a day off for a mysterious meeting. Each time, we all voiced our concerns, but David didn't care. It seemed he had been frustrated for a long time, unable to secure a higher position. And now, as a manager, he was taking out his frustrations on us. Hey Kevin, How's it going? Good evening. Well, as usual. That's good. But you know, at your age, still being just a regular employee, isn't that a bit incompetent? Bottom of the barrel, at your age, it's pretty clear what your future holds, right? It's only a matter of time before the newbies surpass you. Well, anyway, try not to let the newbies overtake you. And of course, I'm counting on you for overtime tonight. David patted my shoulder and walked away, leaving me with nothing but a sigh. A few months passed since David took over. So, Mother's Day is coming up soon, and I thought I'd splurge on a gift. That's right, it'll be your first Mother's Day since you started working. Yes, so I was thinking, maybe a short trip nearby, perhaps an overnight stay. That sounds wonderful. Your mom will be thrilled. But then, I have to do the same for Father's Day, right? I'm thinking about where to go. They both love hot springs, so maybe somewhere with hot springs. Hearing two female colleagues, one a new graduate and the other in her third year, discuss this, I glanced at the calendar. Right, Mother's Day is coming up. Every year, I take my mom out for doTELLer, but maybe this year, I'll splurge on a luxury hotel for an overnight trip. That's what I was thinking. And as they say, strike while the iron is hot. Figuring that reservations for Mother's Day would fill up quickly, I quickly searched on my cell phone while having lunch. I made the reservation early. Then, I returned to the office and immediately applied for an annual leave using the internal form. I wanted my mom to relax, but I knew she'd hesitate to go alone if I just told her to enjoy herself. Well, it's a bit embarrassing to be staying at a hotel with my mom at this age, but it's good to show filial piety every once in a while. However, getting annual leaves, which was normal during Michael's time, has become impossible since David took over. I wondered what he would say this time. But if things stayed the same, the frustration among my colleagues would only keep growing. So, I decided to boldly apply for a weekday off. Until the day of the trip, things were relatively calm. I was sure I'd be reprimanded for taking an annual leave. I was even prepared to be scolded in front of everyone. But surprisingly, nothing was said. In fact, my application was approved the next day, which left me astonished. Kevin, you seem to be in good spirits lately. Something good happened? I don't think so, just the usual. Well, that's good. Keep up the good work as always. David was in too good of a mood, almost frighteningly so. Well, as long as things continue peacefully, that's all that matters. But I couldn't shake the feeling of calm before a storm. Then came the day of the trip. In the morning, my mom and I enjoyed sightseeing around the hotel, and we headed there in time for check-in. Wow, can we really stay in a place like this? Yeah, I'll go check in now. Just wait here. Thank you. While my mom excitedly explored the luxurious hotel, I went to the front desk to check in. But I stopped in my tracks when I saw someone who shouldn't be there. David. David ran over to me, surprised. Hey, Kevin. Why are you here, David? What do you mean, why am I here? Why is a low-level employee like you using annual leave to come to a luxury hotel like this? Don't mess around. David, grabbing me by the collar, began yelling. I was shocked and confused. But, you approved my annual leave request, didn't you? I complained about that. Indeed, David had approved my annual leave for today. Why am I being yelled at now, and in a place like this? That was just to lead you on. I never thought you'd actually take the day off and come here. Lead me on. I don't understand what you mean. Are you kidding me? I'd like to see the face of a parent who raised such an incompetent person who can't even understand their own position. What? The face of your parent? I want to see the face of the parent who raised such an incompetent person. David seemed to relish in saying such things. First of all, you don't even do unpaid overtime, and you seem to have no ambition for promotion, staying a regular employee forever. What's wrong with you? Don't you want to get promoted? If you do, work overtime every day. Show some determination and grit. Otherwise, the higher-ups won't value you. Well, you might not understand what I'm saying. Being incompetent and all. Sorry for speaking about complex things. He kept ranting whatever he wanted. Feeling the painful stares of those around me, I knew I had to do something about this situation. Kevin. Hearing the commotion, my mother walked over. Realizing something, I turned back to face David. David. What? Here is my mother. Saying that, I stepped aside to let my mother forward, causing David to freeze in shock. Why are you here? Well, hello. I suppose this is our first meeting outside the office, isn't it? Why? What is the chairman here? Wait, parent, what does this mean? Oh, you knew who I am. I assumed I was quite unknown within the company, as we rarely meet. No way, not knowing our chairman's face. That's impossible. Well, I'm flattered. Yes, my mother is chairman of our company. Apparently, David knew of her but was unaware of our family relationship. David was completely intimidated in the presence of my mother. So, David, I've heard everything. My son seems to be under your care. However, your assertions are exactly as my son described. Well, that. Annual leaves are a legitimate right of employees. You have no business to reprimand for that. And what about this? Unpaid overtime. Overtime for promotion. Which era are you living in? Listen, work isn't about blindly putting in hours. It's most important to do it efficiently. Without proper balance, you can't perform well. As a professional, I assumed you understood that, but maybe I was wrong. My mother, with a fixed smile, cornered David. He was completely cowed by her. But I had no intention of stopping her. Frankly, I thought she should be even tougher on him. Relying on others wasn't my style, but my mother had always been frightening when angry, running a company for so long. Her lips smiled, but her eyes were anything but. In fact, just looking at them gave a chill, so icy and ruthless they were. Well, that's enough. I'm not here for work but for leisure. I don't have the time to spare on you. Chairman, do you have something more for us? Any other business? Yikes. No, nothing. Good. I'll inform you of your consequences later. Be prepared for that. Kevin, let's go. Yes. Seeing my mother so livid after a long time, I couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. Careful not to aggravate her further, I responded and walked past Aston David. Glancing at his face as we passed, I saw a man utterly crushed by despair. After that, my mother and I enjoyed our trip immensely and returned home very satisfied. The day after next, when I went back to work, David's seat was no longer in the sales department. It seemed that my mother had called HR from our trip. David's unreasonable treatment of his subordinates came to light. HR had already deemed him unfit for the managerial role, considering him just a stopgap until a more suitable person was hired. Of course, had he performed well, he could have kept his position, but his conduct had sealed his fate. It seemed that David had mistakenly believed he earned his position through his own merit, when in reality, it was more of a fluke. This misperception led to his tyrannical behavior, resulting in an immediate transfer. He was transferred to the logistics department, a place so hot it makes you sweat like a waterfall, where physical strength is essential. The nature of the work there meant it was mostly populated by young, physically strong men, making it a somewhat sweaty environment. David, to that logistics department. I doubt he'll be able to keep up. He's probably aiming for voluntary resignation. Well, considering what he's done, it's a fitting consequence. Anyway, with him gone, we can work more efficiently again, which is a relief. Yes, no more unnecessary overtime or working on holidays. It seems we're heading back to a peaceful work environment. Everyone gossiped, but no one truly seemed worried about David. He was probably feeling marginalized now, sweating profusely in the logistics department. I didn't feel a shred of sympathy for him. In the sales department, the position of the next department head was left vacant for a while, and the manager, Steve, temporarily took on the role. We made a mistake with an interim personnel decision, thinking it was just for a short while. I apologize for the great inconvenience caused to everyone. The HR department, seemingly reflecting on their actions, came all the way to the sales department to leave words of apology. It seems my mother, though retired as the active chairman, reconsidered the need to keep an eye on the company's internal affairs. The current president, who had been my mother's competent right hand for years, also received a word from her and sent an apology. In the sales department, we were just glad to have our peaceful work environment back and felt almost embarrassed to be apologized to by various parties. Soon after his transfer to logistics, David left the company. It's unclear whether the transfer was a move to encourage his resignation, but working under younger employees must have been unbearable for him. And physically, it must have been quite demanding. He was really put through the ringer, someone commented. It's ironic for someone who hated taking orders. He couldn't have lasted long. Such rumors faded within a week. Later, I was summoned by my mother to the reception room. Kevin, sorry for the sudden call. It's fine, but what's up? Something else happened. No, it's different. I was hoping you'd be ready to accept a promotion soon. A promotion? Yes, I'm very grateful you joined our company. I know you've continued to work in the field based on Michael's advice, and you have your own goals and pride in your current job. I think I understand all that. Then why suddenly? It's not sudden. I've been thinking about it for a long time. It's not just me. President and the HR department agree. Really? That was surprising to hear. Kevin, since you joined the company, we haven't had a proper discussion, so let me say this now. I hope, if possible, you can work towards becoming the next president of the company. That is, certainly, since I joined the company you founded, I've thought about eventually, but I still have so much to learn, and I still want to be out in the field. I understand, but our company's work isn't just about being in the field. Certainly, there are things you can't understand and experiences you can't gain unless you're on site. However, there are also things you can only understand and learn by being in a leadership position, directing others. I understood what my mom was saying. I felt the same way. When I first joined the company, I was fully intent on eventually taking over as president. However, after working in the textile industry for 10 years, I grew increasingly anxious about whether I could handle such a big responsibility. I told my mom, "Please let me think about it." I called Michael on the weekend. He had successfully undergone surgery and was now enjoying a peaceful retirement. I haven't been in touch for a while. It's been a long time. I discussed the recent events and my mom's proposal with Michael. Honestly, I'm more anxious than confident right now. I worry that standing at the top in the state of mind will only make everyone else uneasy. Then Michael quietly said, "Do you have time now? It's your day off, right?" "Yes." "Then bring me the highest quality fabric sample you're handling right now," he instructed me. I quickly grabbed what I believed to be the best fabric sample I was handling and went to Michael's house. After showing him the sample, Michael commented, "You've really come to understand, haven't you?" He smiled kindly. "It's proof that you've built up solid experience in the field. You should be fine." His words resonated deeply with me. I felt acknowledged for the first time and was moved. "Thank you, I really appreciate it." And that feeling gradually turned into confidence. Encouraged by Michael, I decided to accept my mother's wishes. I was anxious about what others would think of my promotion, being inexperienced in many areas. But when I was actually promoted to manager, everyone seemed happier than I was. "Kevin, Congratulations. It's as if it's my own promotion. I'm so happy. Finally. I was wondering why you hadn't been given a position until now. Congratulations. Everyone, thank you. I may cause some inconvenience, being inexperienced and only knowing the field. Not at all. We all know how much you've contributed to the company. Don't worry, we'll support you in whatever way we can. Thank you, really, thank you. The sound of applause was heartwarming. With my promotion to manager, Steve was promoted to department head. As a sales department, we had a foundation to move forward unitedly once again. After my promotion, I became more proactive in training and guiding within the department. Even though juniors had asked for my guidance before, I was mostly out in the field, so I wasn't often in the office. Especially the new female employee, who had wanted to ask me many things, benefited from my new focus on sharing knowledge and sales expertise. Perhaps as a result, the company's performance improved. Jess, is there something you still don't understand? No, it's not that, Kevin, do you have a girlfriend? What? The new female employee asked such a personal question. Looks like spring has finally come for Kevin. Others teased me. I spent several years living through such days. I was promoted to department head, recognized for my achievements as a manager. At first, I was filled with anxiety about my new role, but now I am fully resolved to take over as president when the time comes. This is all thanks to my mother, who showed me the value of hard work from a young age, Michael, whom I respect, and everyone at the company who has supported me. Their encouragement has built my confidence and contributed to the company's growth. Kevin. President Wilson, good to see you. Likewise. How are you finding the department head role? Well, I'm still feeling quite inexperienced. Haha, you're really humble, quite different from your mother. I occasionally join him for drinks, savoring these moments. He has worked under my mother for a long time. I want to learn as much as I can from him now about his vision for the company and his approach to leadership. I don't want to rely on my mother's influence. I want to earn recognition for my own abilities. To do this, I'm willing to work hard, even if it means getting my hands dirty. Perhaps sensing my intentions, President Wilson shares various experiences with me, including stories about my mother and his own failures. I also make time to visit home and listen to my mother's advice. You look much more mature now. Maybe it's just a parent's pride, but you really seem dependable. Hearing her say that, I can't help but feel it's true. Until now, I've been focused solely on field work and my own responsibilities. That was what was required and expected of me. But as my responsibilities have grown, so has my perspective. It's a natural progression, and I need to adapt. Of course, there are things I need to oversee from a higher level. But sometimes, it's important to return to the field perspective, ensuring the well-being of the employees and the appropriateness of personnel management. It's precisely because I've always been in the field that I can think this way. My time in the field has broadened my horizons. Still, I remain inexperienced. Just appointed as a manager, I find the thought of aspiring to be president presumptuous. But for everyone who believes in me, who follows me, I want to quickly grow into a role I can be confident in. I aspire to take on that position as soon as possible, with confidence in my abilities. There's still much to learn from my mother, Michael, President Wilson, and everyone else. I'll keep my feet on the ground and strive to be a president that would not be an embarrassment. That's my resolve.